Let's add some direction to our lives, or at least to our programs. And what do I mean by direction? Let's imagine we are riding a bicycle. I'm looking from the top, so I have here my bicycle and the seat. And let's imagine we are moving straight, and at some point we decide to turn to the right. So here we are changing the direction. We were moving in this direction, but then we turned to the right, and we can do this several times. When we look at any 2 points in our motion, we notice that the direction is always similar. The direction is not changing like this suddenly. We cannot do this with the bicycle. We cannot go forward and suddenly bounce to go back where we were coming from. We change the direction smoothly. So I would like to make a program that creates something like this, a line that is smoothly changing the direction. We have been using sine and cosine in different ways. First, we created something that looked like a wave. We created some graphics that were generating some interesting patterns on the screen. We have also been drawing a circle based on a center point. For that, we also used sine and cosine. And we were using a center point and a radius. And the radius is the distance between the center and the circle. We can imagine that to draw the circle, what we do is change the direction all the time. We are increasing this angle, so we are changing the direction. First, we were pointing to the right, and then higher, and then finally to the top. Then we continue turning around, and we are finding all these points here which belong to this circle. So we are changing the direction continuously. We were doing that by increasing a variable called a, and in many of these programs we kept the center and the radius constant. So we're just increasing the angle. Now we're going to use sine and cosine in a different way. Instead of having a fixed center point, what I'm going to do is start somewhere, for example at the center of the screen, and I will pick up a random angle, and then I will find which is the next point. So I will draw a line between these 2 points. And now this is going to be the center point. Maybe now I could continue with exactly the same angle, or change it a little bit and find a new point. And I keep repeating this. So now this is the center point, and I'm going to find an angle which is similar. I could use exactly the same, or I could turn a little bit right or a little bit left and find another point. And if you keep doing this, then you have these interesting shapes which look like the path of some animals walking in the forest. Let's try it out. I have here this simple program. I'm declaring just 2 variables, which are called in this case old x and old y, and this variable a, where I will store an angle. And I'm just setting the size, the background, the color mode, the smooth mode, and no fill. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to call a function called reset, which doesn't exist. I'm going to define this function because I want to define what are the initial values for old x, old y, and a. So I'm going to say here void reset. So I'm going to define here old x, and old x is going to be equal to the middle of the screen. Old y is also the middle vertically, height divided by 2. And a is going to be a random angle. And we have seen that a complete turn when working with angles is 2 pi. So I'm gonna get a random number between 0 and 2 pi. I basically can go in any direction, maybe up, down, left, right, doesn't matter. Now I have here called this reset function when the program starts. To get started, I could draw a point at old x, old y, just to see that it's working. And because this point would be very thin, I'm gonna add here a stroke weight 10, just to test if the program is working. Okay, so there is our big point. We can now get rid of this stroke weight. Okay, now the thing I want to do is calculate the new point. If this is the point where we are currently at, we want to find what is the next point. So we need a new pair of variables. I'm gonna declare here float new x. And the new x is gonna be relative to the old x. So I'm gonna type here old x plus something. And I'm gonna type here cosine of a times 5. I don't want to make this number too big. I don't want to move like 100 pixels away, but just a little bit. So you can see this is the same formula we used for the circle. We are using this as a center, the old point, and we are moving somewhere around the old point within a radius of 5. So we could say this radius here is 5 pixels. I'm gonna do the same with the new y is old y plus sine of a times 5. So now we have this new x and new y. We could draw a line now instead of a point. A line between the old x, old y and the new x, comma, new y. Finally, we have to change old x and old y, otherwise we will stay forever at old x, comma, old y. So I'm going to say here old x is new x and old y is new y. Now, because the angle is never changing, it's not going to be very interesting. The program will just draw a line randomly from the center in some direction. Every time we run the program, it's a different direction. But this would be much more interesting if we change the angle. So I'm going to say here a equals a plus random and a number between minus 0,1 and 0,1. So we are slightly changing the direction where we're going. Let's see now what happens. So now you can see the line is not straight anymore, but it's quite straight. Depending on how big these numbers are, we will get bigger or smaller direction changes. If we enter here 0,4 and 0,4, now this looks a bit more as our example here. And every time we run the program, we get a different path. Would be nice though that we detect when we run out of the screen. Hey, look, it came back. So we should add some if statement to be sure we are still inside the screen. But let's leave that for the next episode, and let's just quickly review what we have done here. We just have two variables where we hold the current position, or actually the last position, and an angle. And when the program starts, we call this reset function, which sets the old x and old y to be in the middle of the screen and just makes up a random direction. It's choosing a random number between 0 and 2 pi. So we cover the whole set of possible directions. And then here is our draw function, or this drawing loop, which is very simple. We just create a new x and new y, which are based on the old position, and we are always going to move 5 pixels away. We don't know exactly in which direction. The direction was random, but whatever the direction was, then we calculate what is this new position. And then we draw a line between where we used to be before and the new location. And then we update old x and old y to tell processing, hey, now we are in this new position. And then we change randomly the direction a little bit. So, and we kept doing this over and over. So we get a line like this pink one here, or maybe like the yellow one. We are moving always in the direction of A, which is the angle, and A is slightly changing over time.